Hello, my name's Chris Jones, and I'm the father of a young boy who had Duchenne muscular dystrophy. His name was Mitchell, and I'm excited to spend a few moments with you and share a bit about our story. And the message we want to share today is about how to find gratitude and joy and purpose in the in between moments, and why those little moments in our life matter more than we think. I'm here today because, like you, I've been touched by a child who had a neuromuscular disease. My son's name was Mitchell. He followed me like a shadow on a sunny day. And if we were the same age, I'm pretty sure he would have been my best friend. At the age of 3, Mitch was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We spent the next several years worried about his health, yet at the same time trying to learn how to live in the moment and let tomorrow be. At the age of 9, Mitch was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, premature heart failure. Because the heart is a muscle too, we understood what was happening, but we were surprised to see it happening so quickly. Within about a year of his diagnosis of heart failure, he was sent home on hospice to die. And we had the painful privilege of ushering our son to the other side. I think it's safe to say I've been to hell and back, but I'm back and I have a story to tell. And that story is that joy and happiness can be found in the in between. My son and family mean the world to me, and they've grown quite a bit since my little boy has left our family. I've seen our kids graduate from high school. In fact, I married my daughter off just last year and my son just last month. My family continues to grow, and we're learning to take advantage of the moments that are before us. But I think the majority of life can be described in one sentence. It doesn't often go as planned, and that's okay. I'm going to share with you, to illustrate a few points, a few slivers of our life between 2009 and 2013. This was a time where there was great unrest and uncertainty, and at times profound sorrow. We'll probably all relate to this on some level, that during our son's diagnosis, particularly in the latter part of his life, we found that isolation began to grow. That the sicker our son became, the harder it was for people to identify with our situation. Certainty about his future began to decline. Medical complications were on the rise, and stress was at an all-time high. Yet despite all of that, against the backdrop of all this difficulty, we found moments and reasons to be happy. We found little points of light that contributed to our joy in life, despite the circumstances with which we faced. You see, happiness is not a destination. It's a journey with 1,000,001 setbacks. It's a frame of mind. It's an attitude. It's a disposition. We'll talk about that in a moment. So if we were to look at the path of life, there's really a path that leads to happiness and one that leads to despair. And I want to talk about the things that contribute to both. The first, I want to talk about gratitude leading to the path of happiness, whereas comparison leads to despair. It's been said that gratitude turns what we have into enough, while comparison is an illusion that robs us of joy. I remember when Mitchell was home on hospice, I was helping him take a bath, and he pointed to his PICC line in his arm, which was pumping medicine into his heart to help him live just a little longer. He said quietly in a soft voice, "I wish I didn't have to have this." He thought a moment, and then he said, "At least I'm alive." And in that moment, I learned a profound lesson that gratitude, despite our circumstances, contributes to happiness. It's been said that gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. Another great quote, happiness doesn't depend on what we have, but it depends on how we feel toward what we have. We can be happy with little and miserable with much. I remember taking Mitchell into the cardiac intensive care unit when he was first diagnosed with acute heart failure. We were stressed and we were worried about his health and his future and we didn't know what was happening. And we went down to the basement of the hospital where they have a gift shop, and we got him a little teddy bear to help comfort him during a time of great unrest and uncertainty. And in the store, I noticed a coin that had the word gratitude inscribed on it. And I thought, what a beautiful reminder to practice gratitude in the very moment. I was grateful that I even still had my son with me. And so I learned after that to continue to practice gratitude while the sun is shining, because when the storms of life come, gratitude becomes natural and instinctive on our part. You see, it's not joy that makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us joyful. The next step toward happiness is learning to recognize the moments, and particularly the moments in between, as compared to focusing on things and stuff. I remember taking this photo of Mitchell and Natalie in my office, and Mitchell was worried about something, and she just grabbed his sweet little face, kissed his forehead, and gave him a hug. And I took a photo of this with my phone because I didn't want this moment to slip by. And I learned early in my journey with my son to collect moments, not things. You know, if we compare the high points in our life, like the theme park trips and all the adventures and vacations we might ever dream to go on, as compared to the ordinary things in life, we would think that the theme parks and all the great adventures are the things that lead to happiness, but they don't. And I'll make an argument here in just a moment, how the most ordinary things in life are where the most beautiful things exist. We did take our kids to theme parks. We enjoyed them. We had fun at them. No problem there. We enjoyed it very much. But those were just momentary experiences. The moment the theme park was over, the joy was over for the most part. They weren't things that lasted. I'll tell you something that did last. We took our kids to Mexico to go see the ancient ruins of the Incas and the Mayas. And it was beautiful. We were in tropical weather. It was just amazing. And our kids enjoyed the ocean, the warm water. And I remember at one point, very early in our experience at the beach, Mitch flopped to the ground on the shore and said, "I'm so tired. I can't do this anymore." And all the other kids were running around like they could have gone on forever, but Mitch was too tired. So Natalie takes Mitch out into the water and begins to hold him. And they just start having a little conversation. I'm out on the beach with my big lens and taking these pictures with them, completely unaware. And here Natalie is comforting my son and giving him a moment so that he could enjoy the water and feel safe. This was the most beautiful experience of the entire trip. Yet there were many others a lot like them, but this was my favorite. So if you were to compare the two experiences, one, this extravagant vacation, or the ordinary moments, this in between, I'll tell you, that's what I weigh. This has the most weight and value to me. It's the little moments in between. And we had lots of those on the trip that I was grateful to recognize in the moment. Another example of where sometimes the big fun things aren't so much the great things is we had a bounce house that your kids would use in the summer, and we'd fill it up with water, and they'd go sliding down the water slides. And it was fun. Yeah, our kids really enjoyed it. But I discovered something about an hour and a half later, it got really quiet up in our backyard. And I go out there, and what I see is a little fort created that my kids made. And there in the shadow of this summer fort are my three boys having fun. And they had spent the entire afternoon in this little thing. It was adorable, sort of, because here's the thing, here's the math, right? The Costco bouncy water thing that we bought for $1,000 US, you know, as compared to a little cheap swimming pool and PVC pipe and towels. My kids had more fun with the $20 thing than they ever did with the expensive thing. And we were glad to have both experiences, no doubt about it. But it's funny that our kids don't need extravagant things. They just need time, attention, and maybe a little imagination. And imagination takes them a lot of places. I remember my boy, for his birthday, got a little Star Wars gift, and he jumped inside the box, and that was his fort for the day. Mitch did the same thing. He would grab old cardboard boxes with tape, and we began to construct forts out of cardboard boxes as a tiny child. Just before he went on to hospice, Mitch asked his mom, "Hey, can I sleep in that big cardboard box? We just finished our basement. This was the box for our bathtub." And he wanted to sleep in this for the next couple of weeks. So for over a month, my little boy slept in our living room in the front of our house in a big cardboard box. And that was his fort. And every night his mom would tuck him in, and it was really cute. He was able to enjoy life and make moments of his own. We have a philosophy at our family that we're always down to build blanket forts. And what that means, we're just always excited to create forts of any kind, whether they're out of cardboard boxes or blankets or pillows or all of it together. And so we did some Google searching and found some amazing examples of how you can build really extravagant box forts. And so if you're in a place to do this, I recommend it. I wished I would have done stuff this great when I was a kid, when I had younger kids. But what I want to say is pay attention to the in-betweens, because the very best moments in your life exist in the in-between. 95% of life is ordinary. The monotony of life consumes most of it. Yes, we have high points like a fun vacation or a difficult diagnosis is a low point, but the majority of our life is the mundane. And that, my friends, is where the magic happens. That's where we have those tiny conversations with grandparents and begin to notice those between the cracks of things. The dancing in the kitchen spontaneously, the teasing of our siblings, the lessons playing the piano, or reading books at bedtime, the long walks with our kids, or helping a sibling who struggles, the snow adventures, the adventures our grandparents weave, the little experiences we have with our best childhood friends, the bedtime conversations, learning to do new things, watching our grandparents do crazy things. Those conversations, these little moments in between, are what matter the most. I'm so glad I took this photo. I took the time to recognize this little in-between moment with my wife, pregnant with my youngest son, helping Mitchell and Ethan, my two boys at the time, swing on our swing set. And we were so worried because we already knew our son, Mitch, was diagnosed with DMD, but my wife took a moment to just be in the moment with my kids. And to me, that's a beautiful, beautiful memory. I'll never forget these tiny in-between moments, these conversations, these little crazy adventures. But the truth about parenting is that the days are long, but when you think about it, the years are short. I remember taking my kids on a quick walk with my wife. They all jumped on bikes and scooters, and we all went out on a summer evening. And I was writing an essay not too long ago, and I wrote this. I said, I miss everything in between. I miss everything that was ever routine. What I've learned in my own grief journey is that the things I miss the most aren't the fancy vacations. It's the routine things. It's the things that I always took for granted, were the things that I want back. And if that's what I want back, then that's the stuff I should be investing in right now for the future. That's what I've learned. Relationships are the path to happiness. Isolation, not so much. Harvard University did a study not too long ago, and they said, what if we could watch people's lives like a movie through time? What would we discover about human happiness? They tracked the lives of over 700 people for over 80 years. Since then, they've added another 2,000 of their children to the study. What they did is they took groups of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and began to watch, what does circumstance have to do with happiness? And what are the other factors that contribute to happiness? And what they learned was this: when the study began, nobody cared about empathy or attachment. But as it turns out, the key to happiness is relationships, relationships, relationships. The three big lessons this Harvard study came out with was social connections are really good for us. The quality of relationships matters. And good relationships are not only good for our bodies, they're good for our brains. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. That's what the data presents. Relationships are the key to happiness. Lastly, let's talk briefly about meaning and purpose as compared to circumstance. When we focus on meaning and purpose, we find happiness. When we focus on our circumstance, that almost inevitably leads to disappointment and frustration, because guess what? Life never goes as planned, right? So there's a happiness paradox. Viktor Frankl said that it's the very pursuit of happiness that thwarts happiness. That, my friends, is a deep, deep truth. If you think back on what made you happy in the last week, what is it? Think back on what made you truly happy. And if you need to think back a month or a year from now, think back on what made you the happiest. You see, here's a diagram I put together that would compare different types of things that lead to happiness. There's things that are pleasurable, that are temporary moments that bring us some measure of happiness. There are things that we're passionate about that evoke strong emotions. And then lastly, there's things of meaning and purpose, things that transcend material things. In matters of happiness, I think sometimes we can confuse short-term pleasures for long-term fulfillment. Let me show you an example. Things that are pleasurable are like vacations, parties, camping, food, video games, reading, and other things, things that your happiness ends the moment that thing ends. Then there are things that we're passionate about, like photography and running or writing or sports or anything else that you love to do that you're particularly passionate about. And then lastly, there are things that have meaning and purpose, like parenthood or family or service or spiritual discovery or other things that are deeply meaningful to you. These are sources of happiness. And what I've learned is I love photography and camping. I love going out. I've traveled the world and taken lots of photos, and camping's been lots of fun. And I've learned to take my kids with me. I've learned to involve them in the things that I love, and I'm able to make connections. In fact, we did this just a few years ago in 2017. We took a photo of the eclipse in Oregon, and that was where we had totality. And it was amazing. This was our favorite photo. Look at all those sun flares. It was really a beautiful experience with our family. My point here is this, that if all we do is spend time doing the short-term pleasurable things, we'll miss out on the deeper, richer things in life. And so there's a way, if we are thoughtful about it, we can connect the things we bring that bring us pleasure, the things we're passionate about, with things of meaning and purpose. So think of things that your family or you love to do and see if you can involve others in that. And you'll find that it'll even be more rich than you imagine. Seek for meaning and purpose first, and happiness will follow. This, my friends, is the path that leads to happiness in my life experience: to practice gratitude, to recognize the moments in between, to invest my time and heart in relationships, and to seek after meaning and purpose, as compared to comparing my life with others, to looking at what things do I have or not have, to being alone, or to be just focused on my circumstance, tend to lead to despair. So my parting thoughts are practice gratitude, practice gratitude, practice gratitude. That's the key. And when you are grateful, you begin to recognize those moments in the in-between. This image right here isn't just an icon. It's actually a photograph I took of my sons as they were on a walk on a fall day. And it was a beautiful reminder to me of those moments in the in-between. My friends, at the end of the day, I want you to look back on your life a year from now or a lifetime from now and be glad you lived the life you lived. And the best way to find gladness and gratitude for living life is to enjoy the moments in between, because that's where we spend most of our time, are the moments in between. Thank you for your time. I hope some of these ideas are helpful as we all go through our journey in life, trying to find meaning and purpose and joy.